Okay. So we'll start this evening with a public hearing. This public hearing of the City of Urbana Community Development Commission is called to order at 6 p.m. on September 23rd. Hillary, will you please do the roll call?
Commissioner Diana,
Here.
Commissioner Silvas,
Here.
Commissioner Jones,
Here.
and Commissioner Womack.
Thank you. We have a quorum. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive citizen input regarding the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium fiscal year 2024-25 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, CAPER. The CAPER details goals and objectives of the 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan that were accomplished using CDBG and home funds during the program year July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. The report includes performance outcomes of public service programs, affordable housing activities, and other projects eligible under program regulations. The hearing will also address the fiscal year 2026-27 Annual Action Plan, AAP. The action plan identifies needs, goals, and strategies related to community development outcomes and use of CDBG and home funds over the July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2027 program year. This will be the second program year of the 2025-2029 consolidated plan period. A draft of the action plan will be available for review in spring of 2026 prior to its submission to HUD. Notice of this public hearing was printed in a local newspaper and shared to the City of Urbana's website and social media. Copies of the draft CAPER will be available for review during public comment period that goes from September 10th, 2025 to September 24th, 2025, and can be reviewed at the following locations on the City of Urbana website and in person at Urbana City Hall and the Urbana Free Library. Individuals attending the hearing may provide input on the fiscal year 2024-25 CAPER or the fiscal year 2026-27 Annual Action Plan. Comments regarding the CAPER will continue to be accepted by staff until September 24th, 2025 at 5 p.m. A summary of input received will be incorporated into documents prior to submission to HUD. So now staff will give a brief presentation on the CAPER and the action plan.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Olson. I'm the Interim Grants Division Manager for the City of Urbana. As you just heard, I'm going to be discussing first our CAPER, or Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, for the FY 2024 through 2025 program year that just ended on June 30th of 2025. And then later on in the presentation, I'll provide a few details about our next program year's annual action plan. So just as a brief reminder, the CAPER is something that all entitlement communities who receive CDBG and or home funds are required to do, and is just an annual way of reporting back to HUD on projects that we undertook using CDBG and home funds and progress that we made toward goals that were identified in our action plan and consolidated plan. So the CAPER that we're going to be discussing tonight covers, again, the 2024 through 2025 fiscal year. This is the final program year of the 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan period. As you may remember from our last meeting, we recently submitted our consolidated plan for the next 5-year period, 2025 to 2029. So this will be our last CAPER that's tied to that previous consolidated plan. So the main sections of the CAPER, and you have a copy included in the public hearing packet, are the CR05, which is really the meat of the CAPER, which lays out the goals and outcomes that were identified both in the consolidated plan and then in the one-year action plan. Certain goals that show up in that CR05 table were things that were identified in the consolidated plan, but not necessarily in this year's action plan. So there may be things that don't show up for this year, just to make sense of it as you're looking at it. But then it shows, what we actually accomplished in terms of the goals that we anticipated for the year. And then we'll get into some of those numbers in a bit here. The CR10 provides some demographics as far as the beneficiaries of our programs. And then the CR15 is a bit more focused on the financials, what our allocation for the year was, how much we actually spent for each of the programs. And then the CR20, there's a little bit of overlap with the CR05 there, but that's really looking at a few key affordable housing metrics. So in terms of where we're getting this data from, most of it is coming from something called the Integrated Disbursement Information System. This is the HUD-facing portal that city staff use when we're setting up projects and drawing down funds. So most of what we need for the CAPER can be kind of compiled at the end of the year when we spit out a report through that system. But just to make sure we're getting things correct, we reconcile that with our internal financial records. And then there are certain things that the CAPER asks about in reference to things like the local housing authority that we need to reach out to partner organizations for. So looking at the numbers here, I have our 2024 through 2025 program year allocations pulled up, where you can see we received a little over $389,000 in CDBG and a little over $612,000 in home. And then to the right of that, you can see the amount for those programs that we actually expended. The amount expended that we report does include rollover balances, which is why you can see, for example, the CDBG, we actually expended more than we took in this year. But that is a good thing because we don't like to have these big rollover balances. So we definitely want to spend our funds and get them out into the community as quickly as we can, with the caveat that some projects do take time. As you can see on that note, we did not spend quite as much as we took in the home program. Most of the explanation there is we have commitments to projects, but they're just drawing down funds over a number of years, whether that's new construction with development cycles taking several years or rental assistance agreements that are drawing down funds over a longer period of time. So getting into the numbers here. Some of our notable accomplishments from this past program year were our home repair program, through which we served 17 households. We, through our community partners, supported construction of 8 new affordable housing units. This was through partner organizations like Habitat for Humanity and First Followers. Our tenant-based rental assistance programs through partnerships with the Regional Planning Commission and Courage Connections served 17 households this past year. Our public service activities, which would have been our neighborhood cleanup event, and then youth service grantees who received CDBG funds served 213 individuals this year. And then supportive services through the Home ARP program, that would be through the HHI program that provides grants to homeless services and shelter providers, served 944 households this year. That is a pretty big number. Our grantees report those numbers to us quarterly, so there is a bit of likely duplication going on there, just for some context. And then there were a few things that we included in the action plan that we did not make progress towards, so just wanted to quickly provide some context on that. We had anticipated seeing 6 new units constructed through partnerships with the Housing Authority. On that note, we have made commitments of home funds, but like we discussed previously, those are just longer-term developments that are still in progress. But just to provide a brief update, since we ran the CAPER, we have seen some funds getting drawn down for Bristol Seniors, which is an affordable senior development that's being done in coordination with the Housing Authority over in Champaign. We expect that to be completed pretty soon, so that will be reported in a future CAPER. Overnight shelter, this is in reference, similar situation to the Hope Village project. Again, under construction, but just not quite finished yet. Buildings demolished, that's something that we tend to include in our action plans from year to year. It's an eligible use of CDBG funds if folks on our building safety team were to identify vacant nuisance properties, we could potentially use funds for demolition and site clearance, and then those sites could later be donated for an affordable housing use. We did not identify any properties that were suitable candidates for that in this past year, but we will continue to assess suitability of sites for that moving forward. So just in general, to speak to some of the challenges we saw as we discussed, some of these long development timelines for new construction are leaving us holding on to some of these large balances of prior year funds. We understand that, but we want to keep working to get those funds out the door. We did see some staffing turnover, both in the grants division and in our building safety division, that does slow some programs down. We completed slightly fewer housing rehab projects than we did last year. 17's still pretty good, but we hope to be staffed up again soon and be moving at full capacity. Also this year, something we were dealing with is just a lot of uncertainty around future funding for our programs. We were happy to see that we received basically level funding for at least this current program year that we're in now. The future is still a little more uncertain. Last I checked, the spending bill for CDBG and home programs for the next fiscal year was still in a reconciliation progress between the House and Senate. I believe the House proposed eliminating the home program, and then the Senate kind of put it back in, and presumably they're going to try to meet somewhere in the middle, but we certainly hope to see that funded consistently. But we will work with what we have, but until they tell us that we're not going to get it, we're going to continue planning for it. So on that note, we will now begin the portion where I discuss the annual action plan. Actually, before I move on to this component of the presentation, maybe it would be good if there were any questions about the CAPER specifically. I'd be happy to take those. Otherwise, I can keep moving along.
I had a quick question about some of the data tables in here.
Sure.
So like preserve consortium neighborhoods is the goal, indicator of activities. And this is one where it says expected program year 25, actual program year 150, but then for the whole strategic plan, there's like 47,000. Is that correct?
So that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
We kind of have to report it as it comes out of that IDIS system. Okay. Really, the explanation for that is sort of a disjuncture between what was anticipated when the consolidated plan was set up, and then the way that certain activities calculate beneficiaries. So something like infrastructure projects like this particular activity was, when you set that up in HUD's system, and you say that it's an area benefit, it then calculates an estimated number of beneficiaries based on the size of that area. Which is why you get some of those really big numbers over several years. And that was probably just an oversight when the plan was set up.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you.
Delve into the explanation.
All right, moving right along.
Okay.
So for this next portion of the presentation, we're going to be talking about our annual action plan for the 2026 through 2027 fiscal year. This will be the second year of our new consolidated plan period, which was, just to give another update, was recently approved by HUD, which we were happy to see. This outlines goals and priorities for HUD-funded activities over that second year of the consolidated plan period, and gives us an opportunity to reassess what we're doing with our CDBG and home funds in relation to community needs, and make sure that what we're doing is staying in line with what folks in the community want to be seeing. So as we start to put the budget together for this plan, one of the tricky things is that we don't actually learn how much we're going to have to work with in our budgets until fairly late in the process. So until then, the best we can kind of do is look at what we received in prior years, use that as a placeholder, and then make adjustments accordingly once we know the actual numbers. But currently, we anticipate having somewhere around 390,000 in CDBG and 630,000 in home funds. So everything that we do in the action plan does need to tie into the goals that were identified into the consolidated plan. As a reminder, those are invest in affordable housing, support households in need, encourage community and economic development, and then planning and administration activities. As you can see, we tried to cast a fairly wide net with these categories, which should give us some flexibility if we need to adjust things year to year. But we do need to be mindful that we can tie things that we do in action plans in some way to our consolidated plan. And then just to provide some more specific examples in case you're like, that's too broad, I can't figure out what that actually is. Invest in affordable housing, that's pretty clear. I think that's, literal subsidy to new affordable housing developments. And then support household needs, that's going to be things that are doing more benefits at the household level. So things like rental assistance or our housing rehabilitation programs, and then that community and economic development activity, that's currently where things like our infrastructure projects in target neighborhoods are falling under. So in addition to tying into the consolidated plan, there are some federal statutory requirements that govern what we can do with our funds through the CDBG and home programs. So for CDBG, this isn't totally comprehensive, but just to give a bit of a sense of what we can do things like public services. So later tonight, we're going to be talking about a proposal to provide some emergency rental assistance through Cunningham Township. So that would be something, for example, that falls under public services. In the past, we've funded some programs through our youth services program with CDBG public service funds. Public facilities and infrastructure are an eligible use of funds, as well as housing rehabilitation or blight reduction. So currently another thing we do with CDBG funds is code enforcement in our target areas. And then home is really more focused specifically on provision of affordable housing units. So primarily that's going to be things like tenant-based rental assistance and then construction of affordable housing. So just to provide a overview of what the timeline for drafting and getting this plan out is going to look like. As you can see, we're still pretty early on in this process. So this, at this point, is kind of just letting folks know that this is something that we're working on and that they can be in touch with us as they have ideas about what they'd like to see happening in our community with these funds. But so the next steps we're going to be looking at are putting out a needs survey, probably later this year or early in 2026. In the past, we've distributed this through social media, community meetings, and then some mailings to our target areas. So we'll likely use some of those strategies again this year. We'll also continue to have sit-down meetings with community stakeholders and service providers in the community, because that's where we tend to get a lot of that on-the-ground perspective about what's going on in the community. And then we will have a draft published in late winter or early spring of 2026, at which point we'll have a 30-day comment period, another public hearing, after which it will go to the commission and council for a vote. The current deadline for submission that we're working with for HUD is May 15th. That's 45 days before our program year starts. That can get pushed back if congressional budgeting is delayed, which it has been for the last several years. So we may need to adjust our plans accordingly there. But that's a general overview. I've got my contact info on the screen here. My email is grants@urbanail.gov. Anybody watching at home or on YouTube later can feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about community needs. Thank you.
Any questions for Nick? No, thank you. It's nice to have that summary all in one spot. Okay, so now staff have concluded the presentation. I now declare the public hearing open. If anyone desires to express their views regarding community needs, the CAPER, or the action plan, please come forward and be recognized. Written comments are also welcome. do we get any written comments?
We did not.
Oh, okay, and there's no one here. So, seeing that there are no comments or further comments, I now declare the public hearing portion of our meeting closed. So, thank you. And we move on to our agenda for the commission meeting this evening. So, can we have, I call that commission meeting to order at 6:20 this evening. Can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Diana,
Here.
Commissioner Silvas,
Here.
Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Womack.
Thank you. We have a quorum. So for our agenda this evening, we have the minutes from the public hearing, which was August 26th, and you have those minutes in your packet. Is there a motion for approval of those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Patty. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion about the minutes from the public hearing that was held on August 26th? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and that motion is carried. Also, we need to look at the minutes from our regular meeting, which was on August 26th. Those minutes were in your packet. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes from the regular meeting we held on August 26th, 2025?
I move to approve those minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the minutes from our August 26th meeting? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and we have approval for the minutes from our regular meeting held August 26th, 2025. Are there any additions to the agenda for this evening?
There are not.
Thank you. Was there any public input?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any additional presentations?
No.
Okay. That takes us to the staff report.
Yep, so the first item on the staff report is just an update on our 2025 through 2029 consolidated plan and the 2025 through 2026 action plan. We've discussed this several times at the commission, had several public hearings. HUD has finally approved the plan, and we've had our agreements with HUD executed, which we're happy to see. HUD, there was a little bit of back and forth between our initial submission to HUD and then some changes they wanted incorporated into the plan. But from what we've seen from other communities that we're in touch with, we're about on pace with other folks in terms of when HUD is generally executing agreements with other communities. So it is fairly late in the process. You know, this is the action plan that covers our fiscal year that started back in July, which does create some difficulties. Like, for example, later this meeting, we're just now going to be bringing some funding agreements for use of these funds with sub-grantees, which can put folks in a difficult position as they're incurring expenses for several months prior to actually having an executed agreement. But we work with what we're given on that. But anyway, we are glad to have these funds at long last. Next, just a quick note on staffing. We are hoping to have our community development specialist position posted in early October. So folks can keep that on your radar and feel free to share that posting with people in your network. But again, we're hoping to be staffed up pretty soon. And then lastly, a note that former Commissioner Freeman submitted his resignation from the Community Development Commission earlier this month. We are sorry to see him go, but we've definitely appreciated his service to the community and his time on the commission. So that's all I've got for the staff report tonight.
Thanks, Nick. Any questions for Nick about the issues he brought up in the staff briefing? Well, I'll just follow up and say how much we appreciated Pastor Freeman's participation on the commission and fully acknowledged his busy schedule, especially in the evenings. So we are grateful for the time he did spend with us and hoping that we can get someone to replace him on the commission. Is there any unfinished business?
No.
Okay, so that takes us to new business, And we have several items under new business. Do you want to give any explanation for the resolutions one by one, and then we'll vote?
Sure. I'll just provide an overview of what they all are, and then the commission can decide on how to vote for them. So the first two items are closely related. The first one is a funding agreement using home funds for the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission's tenant-based rental assistance program. And then the second resolution is a resolution approving an agreement for case management costs for that same program using CDBG funds. So we've worked with RPC on their TBRA program for a little over 10 years now. We've tended to fund them on a yearly basis. They're currently pulling down funds from a prior year agreement, but then once those have been exhausted, they will be able to tap into these new funds. Kind of staggering it like that allows for seamless support to the households who are being assisted through these programs. So for this current agreement, we would be funding RPC through $300,000 in home funds, and this would go over a several-year period. We most recently funded them for $200,000 in FY25. The explanation for the increase is that RPC had previously operated two tenant-based rental assistance programs through home funds. One was general tenant-based rental assistance targeting households at risk of homelessness, and then another one was a smaller program that was serving referrals from first followers from the reentry population. Basically, those programs have been combined into one pot. It's just going to be easier administratively, but they will continue working with referrals from first followers, just for context on why there's a slightly bigger number there. And then the CDBG funds would be $75,000. And again, that would be to support case management for those clients. And then the last resolution under new business is to execute an agreement for rental assistance using CDBG funds with Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office. One of the major needs that was identified in our consolidated plan was a need for homelessness and eviction prevention resources. Cunningham Township does have an existing emergency rental assistance program. It is in very high demand, so these funds would basically supplement that existing program and would provide households with up to 3 consecutive months of rental or arrearage assistance. But so that's a general overview, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Nick?
A general question on those programs. When we used to do these, the folks involved in running and operating and supervising these programs used to regularly come in and talk to us about how their programs were doing, what they were covering, who they were covering, how they were doing things. Is there a reason why we're just getting text with numbers and no particular detail on anything?
In my time here, the language that we have typically given to subgrantees is that they are welcome but not required. But if the commission would like to actively request the presence of grantees at our meetings, that's definitely something we can pass along.
From my perspective, especially if we're talking about taking on a new program being administered by different people than we've dealt with in the past, doing that kind of blind and sort of saying, here's a bag of money, have fun.
That makes sense.
I'm not implying any indiscretions, but
And I think
sure
we
like
could.
to know what they're actually doing with their program.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, there are a couple ways we could move forward at this point. If the commission is comfortable with voting on these tonight, we can still definitely request that either or both of these grantees come and speak to the commission at a subsequent meeting to provide an overview of their services and what they're doing with our funds. Or if we want to hold off on a vote until that point, that's also an option, just with the caveat to keep in mind that these would be agreements for this year that started back in July, so we're already kind of far along in the process.
Hence, from my perspective, the greater urgency of why somebody would come and explain a program that's
Absolutely.
already started that is depending upon funds that we really don't know the particulars of why we're doing it.
Sure, but I am happy to answer any specific questions about those programs as best as I can this evening.
Okay, let's start with the Cunningham Township one. Who's involved in the program? Who does it benefit? Who's it serving? How is that determined? All the things that you normally need to know about a grant program that isn't here.
Sure. So those terms are covered in the agreement, which is included as an attachment in the packet. But in general, the conditions of any CDBG grantee would be that they be serving Urbana residents and that they be serving households who are determined to be low to moderate income. So that would be strictly defined as 80%, as no more than 80% of the area median income. But Cunningham Township actually has some stricter requirements on top of those CDBG requirements. They're really focusing at those funds towards households who would likely be facing eviction or homelessness were it not for these funds.
Yeah, are they still operating within the target areas, or are they operating on a broader base of Cunningham Township?
Any Urbana resident would be eligible,
Okay.
presuming they met the income qualifications.
Does that present any problems to us with the supposed use that we're supposed to be making of those funds with regard to target areas?
No, it kind of varies depending on the type of activity. For these sort of household level assistance programs, the metric that we're really looking at is that income eligibility. For projects that are more of an area benefit, those would be things that we needed to focus in a target area. So those would be things like our infrastructure projects or code enforcement and blight reduction initiatives. Those are things that we're limited to target areas for.
Is that good? Yeah. I hear your concern. It was always nice to have the presentations and then our chance to ask questions, get a little more detail, and understand better what they were doing. And then it just felt like a nice logical sequence, and it's just not scheduled that way this year because of the way the funding has come down. So I hear that concern, and I'm sensitive to it. I'm also thinking that in the past we have worked really hard to get organizations to fulfill these responsibilities, and we don't want to punish them for the way that the funding has been scheduled. And so I'm hearing that there's some urgency to us being, responsive to that timeline and to approve, but also thinking that there could be in the future some report back in from those agencies as they make progress or as we might see changes in the community, et cetera. Maybe that's a way to kind of, instead of looking at it prior, looking at it as those funds are implemented. I don't know if we're more comfortable with that.
Well, I think that could be, but I don't think we want to confuse the idea between funds being delayed and hearing from people about past performance. The past performance is the past performance. We just don't know what it was. And that, I think, is always an essential part of programs, or especially programs with ongoing funding, and even more so new programs that need to kind of lay out what they're doing, who they're serving, and how they're doing it.
One potential option I might throw out there, Cunningham Township's agreement would be the one that is with a new grantee. RPC would be more of a renewal of an existing program. So one option might be to move forward with the renewal if we are comfortable with doing that. And then I'm sure Danielle or someone else from Cunningham Township would be happy to come and talk about their rental assistance program at a subsequent meeting.
Does that fit with a reasonable timeline for those organizations? Would that?
I can check in with them about that. We would potentially have the option of scheduling a special meeting if it's something really pressing.
Yeah.
I do know on RPC's end, their case management at least expired in July. So that one is a bit more pressing. That would be the second resolution on here.
Number 2.
I think one thing from RPC that if they were here, I would be asking them is whenever you combine 2 programs, my experience has been one of those programs has more tendency to go away than to continue. And so I would like to know more about the logistics of how that's going to work, and are both functions still going to remain? Is it strictly administrative, or is one of them going to kind of be bled off into the other? Because there are 2 different functions there that I think in the past we've noted both of those were important things to have happening. And that's something that, I don't know, you probably can't answer for them, but...
No, so just in general, my understanding of how those programs worked in the past was that, first followers would say, we have a client, can you guys fit them into your program? Are there funds available for this tenant? And then RPC would take that client on, the home funds would go towards the rental assistance, and then the case management would go towards, any kinds of coordinating with the landlords, any kind of assistance with finding a unit where they can use that rental assistance support, things like that. So under this new agreement, they would still be able to take those referrals from first followers. It just wouldn't be its own separate program anymore. But the funds would be covering basically the same things.
Yeah, because if both pieces always used to be kind of necessary to make things work when they've been presented to us before, that it was like a part A and a part B to make a lot of things work there. And we just want to make sure that both parts are still there if that's what's necessary. Sometimes just because expenses and costs go up, one has a tendency to just kind of flow into the other.
Yeah, we could also just kind of watch and see how the reporting comes out too, just to see where the referrals came from and what was funded.
Yeah.
And we have asked them, as these programs are being combined, to continue tracking where these referrals are coming, because that is something we want to be mindful of.
Right. Had they given you tracking? I mean, both functions have been going on. I haven't seen tracking on what has been going on for a while.
Sure. So in the CAPER, we tend to report in aggregate, not necessarily on a project-by-project level, but we could pull those numbers.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how effective it's being there.
Sure.
Well, do we want to take these resolutions and do the first 2? I guess we have to do them one by one, right?
You could do an omnibus, but either way, that's 2 votes. So
We could do the first 2, and then we could talk about number 3 and see where we are. But at least get the first 2 done, because that's with RPC, and we're pretty confident that that's a continuation of the work that we've done with them, even though we didn't have a visit from them. You comfortable with that?
Yeah, conditionally. I'm not a big fan of funding organizations
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So is there a motion on, let's do them one by one, on number 1?
Yes, I'll move to approve a resolution to approve and authorize the execution of the Home Consortium Subrecipient Agreement designated the Champaign County RPC as a subrecipient of home program funds for tenant-based rental assistance in FY '26.
Thank you. We have a motion, is there a second?
Need to be the second, but I'll make it a conditional second as noted
Thank you,
before.
Chris. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I think our discussion would just be that we'd request RPC to come see us next month or two.
I'll definitely pass
Yeah.
that along, and I'm sure they'll be happy to oblige.
Okay. So I'll call the vote. All in favor of approving that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. So the ayes have it. And that first resolution is forwarded with our approval. So that takes us to number 2. Is there a motion regarding number 2?
Yes, I move to move the resolution approving and authorizing the execution of the CDBG grants subrecipient agreement for RPC on tenant-based rental assistance management for FY '26, and to move that on to City Council.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
The same second with the same consideration.
Thank you, Chris. We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Same note that they should come brief us about their program.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Any other discussion or comments? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So the ayes have it, and that motion carries as well. So that takes us to number 3. And this is the one with Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office, which is separate from the first 2. I wonder if we want to have any additional requests for more information, or are we ready to make a motion on this one? What do
Yeah,
we
I was just
think?
to follow up on Chris's point, I mean, I think it's a good point that we would like grant recipients to brief us out on their programs. On the other hand, both RPC and Cunningham Township are known entities. They're known in our governmental ecosystem. So I agree with Chris's point about them having talked to us, but I also feel it's all right I would be in favor of moving this resolution forward and just having the same kind of contingency that they should come brief us.
Okay.
So that's okay with me. And I guess the other question is, do we have to be unanimous or not?
No, we don't.
So yeah, so we could have a split vote if that turns out that way.
We could have a split vote, right?
That would be exciting.
We've had a few.
We've had a few, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be unanimous. But yeah,
If we can take a moment, if I'm remembering my OMA training, there are some special rules when there's a 3-person quorum. So let's sit tight for a moment. We're going to look that up.
Okay.
And
Difficulty comes in, as I was saying before, I believe, with the seconding and so forth, is
Yeah.
that it,
Can you second the motion and then not vote for it?
that
Surely
would
you
be
can.
the question.
I was just thinking about that,
Yeah.
but surely you can. You're just seconding to bring it to a vote. Doesn't mean you support it. Is it a support for the motion, or is it support to bring the motion to a vote? Yeah.
okay.
Support of it.
Reading in Illinois, according to our OMA laws, when there is a 3-person quorum, an affirmative vote of all 3 members present is required to adopt a motion, resolution, or ordinance.
Good to know. So far, so good. We had all 3 of us voting on the first 2. Okay, so we have, Do we have a motion for number 3? I've lost track of where we are. No. Okay, we have not made a motion yet for number 3.
The procedure would be we would move to approve it, and then we may not all vote for it, in which case it wouldn't happen, but
Right.
I will go ahead and make a motion. So I move to approve to move this resolution to City Council to authorize the execution of an intergovernmental agreement for rental assistance between the City of Urbana and the Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office.
Okay, so we have the motion for approval of this. Is there a second? Can I second as chair? Why wouldn't I be able to? I have to like wear multiple hats if there are only 3 of us here.
Yes, you can.
Okay, so I will second the motion and ask for any discussion, any additional discussion about this number 3 resolution.
I do, similar to the other 2 motions, I think it's great for this party to come talk to us
Yeah,
if we do approve it tonight.
give us some background.
Or even if we don't, they should still come talk to us, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Not knowing what that discussion will entail, not necessarily anticipating that it would raise any high negatives, but theoretically, if it did, this agreement would still be in place for the balance of 1 year?
Yes, with the note that, the agreement includes, various provisions for, termination of the agreement in the event of noncompliance, and do give us monitoring privileges as the responsible entity.
Yeah, and it's not so much, from my perspective, it's not so much a matter of non-compliance. I don't know what compliance is more the question, when you don't know how a program runs and what it's doing. It could be perfectly in compliance with what they're doing, but still not be something one or more of us would want to have agreed to.
Any other discussion before we vote? Okay,
Let me ask one more
Yeah.
question, if I may, all right? So, do you have any idea when you say they've already embarked on these things? Is Cunningham Township embarked on projects here and outlay of funds in the anticipation that this was going to be approved, or?
So Cunningham Township provides emergency rental assistance just as part of their general activities that they use that are funded primarily through local tax levy. They tend to exhaust those funds. I don't have their budget in front of me. My understanding is that they would just be able to serve additional households through these funds on top of what they're already doing with the tax levy.
so it doesn't change the nature of what they do, it just increases their capacity.
That's correct.
And that is, I don't recall seeing that anywhere in here. That it's just an expansion as opposed to a replacement. Which
Noted.
often happens with municipalities and funds, is that fund come in from somewhere which allows other funds to be spun off to another purpose. Which I would be interested in what that purpose is if that was the case.
I don't think it's necessarily that it's replacing other funds. It's an expansion of the program so that they can serve additional households. There is, as we discussed in some of the data that was presented with our consolidated plan, there is a very high demand for this kind of assistance.
Any more discussion before we vote on number 3? Okay, so We have a motion and a second to recommend approval for the third resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I'll vote to support it too. With the caveat that we do need to talk to these people, and I don't think we should continue backing into arrangements like this.
Noted. We can definitely change how we handle that moving forward and make sure we have some more preemptive communication.
That's a long answer to your vote, but yeah,
It's an aye, right?
yes, it's an aye.
It's an aye, okay,
It's a first aye, not the second aye.
thank you. Okay, so the ayes have it, and we have approved, actually, all three of these resolutions with the caveat that we would like additional information from these entities about the programs that they're going to implement with the funding, and maybe additional background information on those organizations themselves, because they are also changing over time. We visited with them before, but it's been a while, I think, so it wouldn't be a bad idea just to touch base with them and find out who they are and then what they're doing. Okay, are there any other items for our agenda this evening? No?
There are not.
No, okay, thank you. So, having exhausted our agenda, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.